Okay, hello and welcome to MSDynamicsWorld.com's Fall 2013 BI and Reporting webcast series. I'm Jason Gumpert, and joining us today for the event is returning speaker Noah Mosley of MSX Group. Noah is a veteran financial reporting expert for Dynamics. He focuses on Microsoft Forecaster, Management Reporter, and FRX. He was actually here yesterday for a session on Management Reporter, and we will have an on-demand recording of that available very soon. If you missed it, I'd highly recommend it. But we are glad to have him back today for a session on Forecaster. So as we get started, I just want to add that we invite you to add your feedback and questions today during the session. You can use the Q&A block or the chat block that you should see to the right of the screen right now, and we will get to as many of your questions and comments as we can too. So without further delay, please allow me to welcome Noah Mosley.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate that. I've got my PowerPoint slide up there for us on the screen. Let me know if you can't see that one. I've got a few slides for us to go through before we actually get into the product. So let's get that underway for us. A little bit about myself and my company. I'm with the MSX Group. We're a consulting practice, and we specialize in three products. We handle Management Reporter, Forecaster, and FRX. And we do those for all four of the Dynamics, GLs, AX, GP, NAV, and SL. We handle all the consulting services for those three products, training classes, webinars such as this, and software support as well. You've got my email address there at the bottom of the page there. That's the best way to get in touch with me, and I'll have that at the end of this session as well. A couple of questions that Jason's got a poll out there for us to vote on, so we get a feel for the audience to let me know your exposure to FRX. Just curious if you have already seen a demo of Forecaster. Some of you, this may be the first time you've ever seen the application. And also curious if any of you have already installed Forecaster. So that's on the right-hand side of that WebEx panel there. There's just yes or no options for those two questions, and we'll look back in a little bit and see how everybody has for exposure to Forecaster.
So Noah, I think those results should be visible now.
Those pop up pretty fast.
Today they do. Yeah, so there you can see it.
Yeah, so have you already seen a demo of Forecaster? 60% say they've never seen Forecaster, so the majority no. Have you already installed Forecaster? Another 60% say no there. Only a very few have seen Forecaster so far. Actually, only one person has already seen it and got it installed. So we've got a good overview of the application for you today. So since you've never seen it, this will be a great introduction to the application. So the majority of you are probably like the majority of all the clients I've ever gone to over all these years. I've been doing this for Forecaster since 2001. That's my first Forecaster implementation. It's been quite a while. And pretty much every client I ever have gone to, they all are going from Excel over to Forecaster. They've been doing the budgets in Excel, and they've just gotten so large or out of control that they really just need a new application or solution to solve their budgeting problems and their forecasting problems. If you're doing your budgets in Excel, when it gets really out of control is you start your templates for the budget cycle. You end up having to make tons of different copies of that Excel template, and then you email that template out to all your budget managers. And while they have it, you just wait. You wait for them to finish their work and then email it back to you. You don't really have any kind of clue about what stage they are with the process. Have they even looked at it yet? Did they get the email? So it's a wait and see type of deal with emailing out those Excel files and waiting for them to get back. And then once you do get them back, there's the whole consolidation process, pulling all the budget files in Excel all into one file. So you can consolidate all the balances from all the budget managers into one consolidated budget. And then getting that consolidated budget and comparing it to your actuals is another feat as well. So those are huge hassles that people go through if you're budgeting in Excel, and you just have developed a process that is so large that it's really outgrown Excel. Forecaster gives you a great solution to fix all these things for you inside an application that's built to handle these things specifically. Forecaster, it is for all four of the GL products, AX, GP, NAV, and SL. You're going to use it for budgeting, forecasting, and planning. It's a tool where you can open up input screen, pull back balances from that forecaster database, make changes to those balances, and save it. It's great for making those changes, and as soon as your users, all your budget managers, click Save on the input screen, it all gets saved into a single SQL database. It's all in one location, and it, right away it automatically consolidates, and all the reports and forecasts are up to date. And on top of all this, you've got, it's not Excel, so it's a separate application, but when your budget managers log into Forecaster, their input screens and their reports are spreadsheet type layout. So they will be very familiar with navigating around that spreadsheet type layout. When you are installing Forecaster, there's several different pieces that get installed. Those three components are listed at the top there. You're going to have a desktop application of Forecaster. Not everybody will need a desktop application. If you are an administrator of Forecaster, you will need it. But your budget managers out in the field, they might just go through web access. So they can just log into Internet Explorer for a web page of Forecaster, and it pulls up their budgets in Internet Explorer. So two options for them to get to Forecaster, either a desktop installation or web access. There is an Excel add-in as well, so we are so tied to Excel in everything we do, you inevitably still want to get data in and out from Excel. There's an Excel add-in that lets you pull data out of Forecaster and also push data back into Forecaster. All the data in Forecaster is stored in a single SQL database, and all the security is based on Windows authentication or SQL authentication. So every user that logs into Forecaster has got to be set up with all their security rights. So you tell Forecaster what departments they can budget for, what input screens they can get to, can they get to capital, can they get to revenue, all that detail. It's all set around Windows authentication or SQL authentication. And as I'm going through this stuff, if you're typing any questions, at the end of the session, Jason and I will go through those questions with you, and I can jump back to anything in the slides here or in the application. Inside Forecaster, it's a spreadsheet type layout. Your users will be very comfortable with that layout there. Security and workflow is built into Forecaster. I talked a little bit about security just on the previous slide, but workflow lets you keep track of the budget process. So workflow tracks whose budgets are in progress, whose budgets have been submitted, which budgets have been approved, rejected, or completed. So that keeps track of everybody's status. It keeps track of emails going back and forth. The email just says, hey, this budget has been submitted. It's ready for you to review it. Emails like that. There are detailed budgeting pages inside Forecaster already set up with very specific templates to handle budgeting for capital for new assets. You can break down your revenue detail for budgeting inside Forecaster, and the HR section as well. So you can import all your existing employees and budget for all their wages, taxes, and benefits, and also budget the same things for any new hires. And that instant consolidation for reporting, as soon as your budget managers click Save on the input screens, it's in that SQL database, is posted to the chart of accounts that we use from your GL database, and all the reports in Forecaster are all rolled up and consolidated. There's no having to pull all the Excel files together and consolidate those totals and get them into one report. It's already done as soon as they click the Save button. When we get inside Forecaster, there are certain building blocks that Forecaster uses to build all your input screens and your reports. Those are line sets, column sets, and calculation sets. So a line set for Forecaster tells Forecaster what every row on the page on the screen is going to represent. Is it an account number? Is it a header? Is it a calculation or subtotal? Our column sets will tell Forecaster what every column on the screen will represent. Will it be a budget column for a particular month? Will it be actuals? Will it be a quarterly total or year-to-date total? Or calculation for columns as well, calculated columns. And our calculation set If you have formulas that you want to apply to a certain account, you set those formulas up in a calculation set, and then every budget manager uses that same list of formulas. So it's all, you control it as an administrator. They can't change the formulas. You set all that up for them. You set it at one time, and then everybody uses that. When you define your line sets, column sets, and calculation sets, you just match those together, and those are your definitions for your input screens and your reports inside Forecaster. Really easy to set those up and get your budget rolled out to your budget managers. Let me jump over to the application and give us a tour here. So Jason, I should have shared on my screen the input screen for Forecaster. Let me know if it doesn't.
I'm seeing it now.
Okay, thank you, Jason.
Yep.
So I am in the Forecaster application. When your users, your budget managers, or anybody as administrator log into Forecaster, they'll have a login box. They'll just log into their company. They'll either have a user ID, which is they'll just type it in, or they can use Windows authentication. More and more of the clients I go to now are using Windows, so the clients don't have to worry about yet another user ID and password. So Windows authentication works fine for Forecaster. And when they get into Forecaster, you've set up all the security. They can only get to the input sets that you give them access to. They can only get to the reports that you've given them, and then it's just their data. The screen I have in front of us is the main input screen for Forecaster. There's several tabs across the top. You've got multi-row, which is the default one, the main one. And you've got additional tabs for single-row input, human resources, capital, and revenue. So all the 5 tabs there, I'm looking at one specific department's budget. I can see at the very top of the page, this is for New York Manufacturing, Department 11010. So I'm doing their budget. When I'm done with that one, I can just save it, click the Open folder, and switch to the next department and do their budget. Looking at this multi-row page, you've got account numbers down the left-hand side, and you've got the columns going across. I've got 12 months of budget and the year-to-date total on the very far right-hand side. Now, when you set up these input screens for your budget managers, you decide what accounts show up down the left-hand side and what columns show up across the top. You can change this. You can have as few or as many columns as you need to. Same thing for the accounts down the left-hand side. A lot of flexibility when you decide when you build these. You can build these as a single input screen and with a single list of accounts, and every budget manager uses that same definition. You could, if you needed to, make it separate, so each budget manager could have their own individual ones as well. So you can customize this as much as you need to. For data input for your budget managers, a lot of these rows are locked from input, so they've got equal signs on the left-hand margin. So I know that these rows with equal signs are not available for input here. They're either calculations or they're coming from one of the detail tabs like human resources, capital, or revenue. I do have certain rows that are available for input, like the white rows. This row for insurance. Your budget managers navigate here. They can type in balances. And it's just as easy as that. It updates all the other calculations on the page if anything is related to that, and it updates the annual total on the very far right-hand side. There's shortcuts for data entry for your budget managers. They can just type in a balance, and it's just for that one cell. They can do copy and grow. If I put in 100 and a greater than symbol, 10 with a percent sign, every column to the right increases by 10%. It doesn't affect any column to the left, just columns to the right. You can adjust, you can use that for greater than or less than for percentages or dollar amounts. If you're budgeting on an annual basis, if I scroll all the way to the right-hand side, I've got the annual column. If I type in $12,000 and press enter, the default spread method is to spread that money back evenly across the months. but I could spread that differently with a spread method. At the top here, I've got an icon for spread methods. And Forecaster will let me take this $12,000 and spread it back to the months based on, I can spread it based on the baseline, and the baseline might be last year's actuals or last year's budget or anything else I want to set the baseline as. I can spread it back based on the value of some other account, maybe square footage or revenue. Or we can set up other spread methods like 445, a seasonal spread, working days, and you set as many here as you need to. Made that selection, and Forecaster will take that $12,000 for the year and spread it back to the months according to the spread method. Instead of just typing in balances directly to an account, Forecaster also lets you add details to an account, and they call it line item details. I know that my travel account's got line item details tied to this row because I have a plus icon on the left-hand margin. So it's not just, I didn't just type in $14,000 here in April. I have line item details that add up into that $14,000. If I double click anywhere on this row, Forecaster expands and shows me all the details for the travel account beneath it. So I can see that I have $10,000 for a trip to Hong Kong and $4,500 for a trip to for one of the consultants. Your budget managers can add as many lines of details to an account as they need to. They don't have to call you and say, hey, I need a new account, or can I add a new row to this template in Excel? They can just double click an account, add a row, or as many rows as they need to. And they'll come in here, change the description if they need to. And then the dollar amounts in whatever month they expect to spend that money. So a great way for your budget managers to add details so that you'll know what they're putting that money together for, and they don't have to call you and ask for changes to their input screen. They can do that for any account here on the screen that's available for input. And then when I double click anywhere on the travel account, Forecaster takes all those rows, resummarizes it, and adjusts the balance. Another way for your budget manager to add notes for you are memos. So a budget manager can add memos to any of the row here. It's just a matter of selecting that row, and there's an icon at the top for memos. Click on that box icon, and Forecaster opens up a pop-up window, and you can type in the text there. This does apply to the whole row. It's not for an individual cell. So if you are making a note about March, you should put that in the text as well. If you have any memos tied to any of the rows here, Forecaster adds an exclamation mark on that left-hand margin. So right away I can tell that that row has a comment tied to it. And even though you as administrator set up these screens, you define what accounts show up, you define the columns, and you define the calculations. Like postage is a calculation for us. My budget managers are not able to type over that balance. It's a calculation that I've set up as an administrator. They can click anywhere on that row, and the calculation shows up at the bottom left of the screen. So I can see that postage is set up as $25 multiplied times the FTE account, full-time equivalents, and that happens every column of the report here. And they can type in short calculations if they need to for their input. So if I go down to freight, and if I do equal 6 times 68, 678, 900, Forecaster will do the math for them. So typing in formulas is fine for the budget managers as they go through the budget process. It doesn't store that calculation that I just entered. It just stores the result. So the multi-rows and main input screen for us. Let's look at some of the other additional tabs at the top. Single row is a quick way for us to change the budget for an individual account. So I'm looking currently at the freight account. Forecaster shows me the baseline column, and the baseline could be last year's actuals, last year's budget, or anything else I want to compare it to. I've got the input column for the balances for the new budget I'm working on. And Forecaster tracks a dollar change between those two columns and a percent change between those two columns. And I can budget by any of those different options. And the bottom row is my year-to-date balances. I can click on that bottom row, open that up. If I want all of my budget to go up by 10% from the baseline, I'll just type in 10. When I press enter, it fixes all the balances for the new budget based on the baseline. Single row is an optional input screen, and it is only one account at a time. You have a drop-down box to select what account you want to budget for, but it does give you that quick comparison by dollar change and percent change from that baseline amount. The Human Resource tab is a great option for us to budget for our payroll data. Forecaster will let us bring in all of our existing employees. You import all the employees for the company as a starting place. And then you can budget for all of their details for next year, as well as any new hires or changes. So each row here is an individual employee that we've imported from the payroll system. Forecaster will let you track their pay rates, either salary amounts for the year or for the hourly pay rates. You'll tell Forecaster what month they will be working with us and how much they are working for us each month. And these could be FTE amounts, or these could be hours per month. Over to the right, we'll also track their starting pay rate, and you can have two pay changes for the year. You'll just tell Forecaster the percentage that you're going to change the pay rate and what period that takes effect. So two pay changes per year for each employee. Forecaster lets you budget for bonus amounts, and bonuses are either fixed dollar amounts or a percentage of their earnings. And you can accrue that evenly across the months, or uncheck this accrue box and tell Forecaster specifically what month to pay the bonus in. Once you have all the details for Human Resources, Forecaster calculates all the wages, taxes, and benefits for all these employees and new hires, and stores that back in the budget, the same budget that multi-row and single row goes to. And we're still in that same department, New York Manufacturing. Human Resources is a optional tab. You don't have to use this piece inside Forecaster, but pretty much all the clients I've had over the years have used this. And also security setup, so if your budget manager should not even be able to get to this tab, don't worry about that. You can restrict their access, and they wouldn't even see the tab at the top of the page. The capital tab is also optional. It's a real short one here for us, not too many columns to go through. This is where we're going to budget for new assets. It's not for your existing assets, it's just for your new assets for the budget. Each row here is a new asset we plan to purchase for the budget next year. Your budget managers can add as many rows here as they need to. The IDs are generic. They can change the IDs. They can change the descriptions that come in for these new assets. And they pick the capital type, which really controls the life of the asset and where you are going to book the depreciation expense and the cost. We've only got 5 different types listed here. You can set these up for as many types as you need to for your budget process. Then your budget manager will tell Forecaster what period you plan to purchase the asset and when to start depreciation expense, the individual cost of these assets, and how many you plan to purchase. And Forecaster calculates the depreciation expense and books that to the budget for us. Now, all of your existing assets, your fixed asset system would project their depreciation expense for next year, and then we would just import those balances for the budget. The Revenue tab is also an optional tab, but more and more people are using this one. they set up Forecaster for budgeting. I'm still in the same department, New York Manufacturing, at the top here. So all the dollars here are for New York Manufacturing. Forecaster lets us set up this revenue page any which way we need to, with as many rows here and as many calculations as we need. And even though this says revenue, you can change that. It could be anything else. You might be breaking down revenue for expenses here as well. In addition to the account numbers listed and the department up top, we can break this down between markets and products. And even though it's markets and products, you could change that. It could represent anything else. This might be state and store locations. It might be consultants. Anything else you want to break down into a separate page for the revenue details. This page is just set up right now to take the unit price and multiply that times the units sold to come up with the sales and the cost for the budget. All this money rolls back into New York Manufacturing. I do have, you can have as many different markets and as many different products as you need to. And the input screen could be the same for each product or completely different. So a lot of flexibility when you're setting up these detailed input screens for the revenue section. The same way with HR and Capital, this tab is optional, but more and more people are using it. When you save this, all these balances roll back into the same budget where Human Resources was stored, Capital, and multi-row, single row were stored as well. This page here, this was a detail input. So you had a line set which told Forecaster what every row was going to represent, and a calculation set for all the formulas. You can use another method for breaking down the details here. If I switch products and look at product 3000, this input screen is kind of a split screen. On the top, I am just tracking units for the motors and units for these compressors. And the bottom of the screen has the calculations that will just take those units that I type in, multiply it by rates that I've already imported for the budget managers, and come up with the dollar for revenues and the cost dollars as well. And you can let your budget managers use the default rates that you have already set up for them, or you can let them override these rates and change that. So it's just a different way of breaking down the detail for the revenue section, whether you use the rates option or you set up your own specific input screens for revenue. So those are the input screens for Forecaster. Multi-row, which is your main one, default, has all the accounts you want to list and all the calculations, a big spreadsheet type layout. That one is required if you're going to let someone budget for Forecaster. The other tabs are optional, but they do come in handy. Human Resources, Capital, Revenue, and Single Row. Now, when your budget managers are working on the budget, they'll be in here, they'll click Save. As soon as they click Save, that gets stored in the SQL database that everybody shares, and it rolls up their balances for the reports inside Forecaster. Now, even though they're going through the budget process and you can see their updated balances as soon as they click Save, you can see their input screens, you can see their reports, you don't really know if they are finished until they actually go through workflow and submit it. So workflow lets you go into Forecaster and update the status. Everybody's budget starts off as in progress. Your users will come out here. Yeah, let me change that first. And I'll jump back into workflow. That was New York Manufacturing. So everybody's status starts off as in progress. I can see that I'm checking on the status for budget 2014 for New York Manufacturing. Your budget manager for that department can come into the same screen and change the status from in progress to submitted. Now, when they do that, that locks their input screen from input, and it also sends an email to the next person in the review process letting them know that it's ready for them to review the budget. Then that next person, after they review the balances, they can come back to workflow as well, and they can either approve that budget or reject it. If they approve the budget, it stays locked and it sends an email to the next person in the review process. If they reject it, it unlocks it and sends an email back to the first person. So you have a good way of keeping track of whose budgets are in progress, whose budgets have been approved, rejected, or completed. And you as an administrator, you can come back to the same page for workflow, and instead of just checking the status for one department, I can check it for the entire company at one time. And I'll get a status for, this is a long list of all the departments, and I'll see each one of their status codes and the date and time it was last changed. So a great way for a budget administrator to keep track of the budget process and tell when everything is about finished or when they haven't even started yet. All the security inside Forecaster is set up under Setup and Security. All your budget users will be set up in here with an ID with different access rights. You may have a few administrators inside Forecaster that have access to everything. Analysts, planners, and viewers are the default groups that get set up with security inside Forecaster. They just have different levels of access. Planners do not have access to the HR tab or capital tab of revenue. Analysts may have access to all those tabs. But even though they don't have even though they do have access to all those tabs for input, like HR, capital, and revenue, they would only have access to their departments because each ID that we set up inside Forecaster for security, you also assign them a list of their department codes. So this person, Business Analyst 2, can only get to these assigned departments, Chicago Manufacturing through the Midwest Sales. They can't get to any of the New York Manufacturing. So they couldn't see the New York HR details, capital, revenue, or any of New York's budget numbers. And you may also have users who are just viewers inside Forecaster. They can't change any balances at all. They can just come into Forecaster and look at reports. So a great option there for getting information out to people in the field as they go through the budget process, but they're not the ones who are responsible for changing the balances. The reports inside Forecaster are spreadsheet type layouts. So if I open up any of these reports that I have, I'll just open up this budgeted income statement for us. And when you open reports, you can open these for any level in the reporting trees inside Forecaster. And you can set up as many roll-up definitions for these departments as you need to. So if I run this for this level of the reporting tree, Forecaster goes into the Forecaster database, pulls all the balances together, and displays the report. This is a summary report, so I can drill down to the details. Got that nifty little icon for the drill there. So if I want to drill down on exempt labor and see where that money comes from, I can double-click anywhere on that row. Forecaster opens up the next page on top of the last one, so they're all still there, just one on top of the other. I can see that $32,000 came from production control, and you can continue to drill down to the lowest level. And since this was HR detail, I can log back into the HR detail section and see the exact employees that make up the balances. I'll just close out of these with the X in the top right-hand corner to back my way back out to the top level report. You can set up as many reports inside Forecaster as you need to. You can give these to all your budget managers or just to certain budget managers. If you give this report to a manager, they can open it up, but they can still only see their assigned departments. They can't see somebody else's department if they do not have access to it. Allocations in Forecaster work really well. So under Setup, Budgets, and Allocations, I can set up as many allocation definitions as I need to. And it's every row here is a different allocation definition. We've got 4 of these set up. And it's a quick way for us to take a lump sum amount that may be booked at corporate and then allocate it out to all my different departments at one time. And you can allocate this money out based on fixed percentages, so it never changes. They always get a certain percentage of the total. Or you could allocate it out based on the value of some other account. So you might be allocating out rent based on square footage. You set these up very easily and run these at any time. It's kind of like a macro in Excel. You just right-click and run the task, and it moves that money right away. For a budget administrator, there are some options such as adjustments inside Forecaster. So if you have, everybody's about finished with a budget, but you decide that you need to adjust a balance for an account or group of accounts for the whole company, it's easy done. You can come back here and to Setup, Budgets, and Adjustments. And Forecaster will let you select what departments you want to modify and account numbers. Let's say I just want to change the numbers for manufacturing. And I'm just going to adjust balances for their utilities for water. And I'm going to adjust that either up and down by a dollar amount or by a percentage. And I'll just select what periods I intend to adjust. It might be the forecast for periods 2, 3, 4, and 5. And as soon as I click Adjust, Forecaster goes out there and adjusts all the balances up by 10% just for those 4 months for the manufacturing departments and the water account, 5,030. So it's easy to do a top-down adjustment very quickly using that adjustment wizard. Let me mention versions inside Forecaster. So you've done one budget, you're finished with it, and you are ready to get ready for the next year or the next revision. Forecaster, once you get certain things set up, will have an option for you for our tools and wizards to copy your original budget into a new forecast model. So it's easy to go through here, tell Forecaster you're going to copy from a particular budget version, and you're going to copy everything or some of that into a new forecast version. So it's easy to go through here with this wizard. You can copy over the setup information between budget to forecast. You can copy any of this over. You can copy over your salary grade information, your human resource details like the individual employees, account balances. You can copy over your comments, line item details, capital details, any of this stuff you can copy from that first budget version over to your new forecast. So it's an easy way to get you started in that new cycle. Jason, how are the questions looking?
We do have a few that have come in. If you want, we could go through some of those now.
Okay.
So maybe one to start with is, what's the future status of Forecaster? Will it be included in Management Reporter?
So right now, Forecaster is a separate application. Every conference I go to, Microsoft is prominently displaying Forecaster as their budgeting tool of choice. So they're still selling it out there. They just released a service pack this year. They are still dedicated to the application. There was talk in the past about them moving the functionality of Forecaster for budgeting and forecasting into Management Reporter. So Management Reporter is the financial reporting solution for Dynamics. So that's for all your income statements, balance sheets, cash flow statements. So So that Microsoft had said they were going to move the budgeting functionality over into Manager Porter, make it a single application. They haven't announced any dates yet. We're always asking and hoping they'll release a timeline for us, but they have not yet. But they will be down in Tampa in 2 weeks, and I'll see them out there on the floor of the expo hall, and I'll be sure to tackle that question again.
Yeah, great point. It is something that I think a lot of people would like to hear an update on, and last I heard, I don't believe they had any plans yet to add forecasting in there.
Yeah, I think they had their hands full with getting Manager Porter rolled out to all of the Dynamics people. And so that's our main focus right now, getting Manager Porter out there to the public, and then they'll focus on the budgeting piece.
Okay, so a question here. We show 3 years of annual history and benchmarks when we send information to departments. How can we get that information into this product?
3 years of actuals into Forecaster. That's easy done.
Well, it was annual history and benchmarks. Yeah, so actuals, yeah.
Yep. So, and you can have that data on input screens or in reports or both. It's just a matter of importing those balances. When you set up Forecaster, everything is set up on your chart of accounts from your GL database. So account numbers are already in Forecaster the same as they are in your GL database. So your actuals in the GL are going to go to the same place that they are inside Forecaster. So it's easy to import those balances. It is a import process. I typically use Manager Porter to pull the balances out of the GL, put that into import file, and then import the balances. But it's once you do the process once, it's an easy process. Doesn't take very long at all.
Okay, another question here. We have departments budget some things such as marketing, HR, and tech that affects all budgets that the individual department doesn't control, but are entered at the department level. I assume this is like the HR tab, but they don't see the details.
I missed the question there.
Yeah, I guess the question is, how would that work in terms of departments that budget some things, but it affects all budgets, and that things that the individual department doesn't control?
So you've got a budget manager that budgets for only certain accounts, and maybe I should read that question. That's in the question box?
It is in the Q&A list, yeah, or we could just come back to it later, perhaps.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go on to another one here. So if two users have access to the same department, can you have two different input sheets for the same department?
So two users need to go to the same department. They can have different ones. So like when I go to data input, I have a long list of all the input screens I can get to, which is really a definition of that screen. So you could have multiple in this drop-down list. That person logs in, they'd only see the ones that you've given to them. And when they log in, it's the same department that that other person uses, but it could have a completely different list of accounts and a completely different list of calculations. So yes, that's fine. They can both log into that same department, have a different look and feel. They would have to contend with the timing, but so if they both logged into that same department at the same time, the second one is only in there as read-only, so they have to wait their turn.
All right. Do top-down adjustments override calculated amounts such as salary?
So so it's kind of both ways. If you do that top-down adjustment with the adjustment wizard and adjust all the balances in the budget, that adjusts the balances, and that's what they are, unless you ever go back into an input screen and recalculate like the HR calculations. Same thing applies for capital and revenue and any calculation on the multi-row. You do the adjustment wizard, that's the balance for the budget. They would get updated if you ever went back into the input screens, recalculated, and saved.
Okay, a question here. How does forecaster data get uploaded to GP, and when accounts are added to GP, how does forecaster get updated?
Okay, so uploading the data into GP, there is a data transfer tool for earlier versions of GP. So there's a wizard that will copy the balances from forecaster into GP. If you can't use the data transfer tool, there is an easy way just to export the data out to an Excel file, rearrange it the way GP needs it, and then import it into GP. So it's either the data transfer tool or the export and import into GP. What was that second part of that question, Jason?
Well, the second part was getting new accounts added that are added to GP back to forecaster.
Okay, yep. So if you add a new account in GP, it's not a constant connection. So it's when you update forecaster, it's kind of a snapshot of what's in GP. So if you go through the import process for your actuals and there's a new account, that will get kicked out as an error. It'll tell you that that account is not in forecaster yet, so you'll have to go through some maintenance and say, okay, this needs to be added as a valid account. I want to use it for budgets. So there is a maintenance process. It's not a constant link between the two.
Okay, I think that covers all of our questions. I know there was one more kind of lengthy question from Barbara, and Barbara, if you're listening, I would say probably the longer sort of evaluation questions, maybe want to contact Noah directly. He'll put his email contact information at the end of the session here. We can get some of those sort of longer discussions going that way.
Okay.
But I think we maybe can make sort of a last call for questions here. And Noah, do you maybe want to take the slides out of full screen mode? I'm seeing them.
I always forget that.
Right.
Okay. So just got on my screen my contact information. So if you are going back to the office and you're going to be installing Forecaster and using that for your budget cycle, if you need help, that's what I do all the time. You got my email address, noah.mosley@msxgroup.com. If you're already using Forecaster or you just want some more information, we've got a message board for Forecaster on our website. It's boards.msxgroup.com. I am going to be down in Tampa, not next week, but the week after with the user group conferences. So if you're down there at the user group conferences, look for me. We'll have a booth on the expo hall, and I'm doing several classes and presentations for Forecaster and Management Reporter. So let me know if you're down there, and let me know you were in the session today.
All right, great. We do have one more question here that came in. How long does an implementation of Forecaster take?
Okay, so it's going to be at least a week. You got the installation, the setup, which will pretty much get you started for the budget. It could take longer if you're a very complicated budget process, or if you have multiple companies, or if you're dealing with multi-currency. So it could push it out past 1 week, but the typical quick start is 1 week. And that is usually on site. We'd go there in person, do the installation, the setup. We work with the budget administrator all that week, so that it's all hands-on. They are helping us build the budget process so that I come in, I show them how to use the application. They tell me what they need inside the application as far as the budget process, and it's a thorough week of us two working and setting up the budget.
All right. Well, thanks again, Noah. Great presentation as always.
Thanks, Jason. I guess I will see you down in Tampa next.
You will, yeah. And thanks to everyone on the line for attending today and for the great questions. Thanks to Ross and Barbara and Dave and everyone else who chimed in. We really appreciate your input and for taking the time to be here with us today. Hope it was worthwhile. There is an evaluation just as we close out here. Please do take 30 seconds to let us know how the session went for you, whether you found it useful, and what you'd like to see in the future. So thanks again, and have a great day.
Thanks, Jason. Bye.